Welcome back to my workshop, my studio, my little cocoon of creativity. My name is Jaco, behind the camera is Demaya. Today we're going to be talking about hinge rings as per our last video. If you haven't watched that, have a look over here. That discusses rings with regards to knuckle issues and how to get the ring to fit it a little bit better if it swings around. Today's video specifically, we're going to be dealing with hinged rings. I've made quite a few of them. I've used the items on the market as well, and there's some really top quality items out there. But the technique I'm using for making these hinged rings, I'm incredibly confident in because I've been making them for years and years. If you find that there's something you can add, it's about the community. People are looking at the comments. So if you've got anything to add, please add it in the comments. I'm working with a platinum ring. It's about 2 millimeters by 1.8 millimeters thick. So in this case, again, there's no pre-made sort of like a ring that you can really add to this without changing the ring shape. So I'm using the existing ring, and I'm going to explain to you exactly what I've done, how we got this ring to hinge, open, close, and then clip as well. However, honestly, it's going to be a very long video if I have to talk about the secondary catch as well. So today's video is going to be dealing with just the hinge mechanism and the clip side. The part 2 will be dealing with the secondary clasp section that we're doing on this. Let me show you what I've done. I'm going to take the ring and put it on a circular stencil so that I can find the halfway mark. It's just to stay balanced. I'm not going to cut it on the halfway mark. I'm going to go down a little bit further because the hinge mechanism actually protrudes into the neck shank. And the section that I'm going to be using for the clip side also protrudes slightly out. So I'm marking the ring on the halfway, and then I'm taking another 5 to 7 millimeters downwards. I can always go a little bit further and work it down if I need to, but essentially what I'm doing is I'm buying myself some metal that will be going into the ring I'm going to be making from the bottom. So I'm cutting the shank off at this point. So it's not perfectly half, it's slightly lower. And I'm going to be filing in and creating the hinge part first. I'm not going to use the part that I'm cutting off. These type of rings need all the strength that they possibly can get. If you've got a ring that tapers down right down to the bottom and then comes up again, you want to make sure that you've got a consistency there. This is the one thing about the ring that we're going to change. If it's thin at the bottom, we're going to have a consistency from the point where the hinge or the clip mechanism is, and we're going to follow through that consistency because we want all the tension we can possibly get to keep this ring in its shape. The point where I cut it off, the width and the thickness, I'm going to make a ring that matches that. So essentially, my ring is not going to taper down for comfort towards the bottom. My ring is going to maintain the thickness all the way from the clip to the hinge. I'm going to manipulate that 5 to 7 millimeters that I've created on the edges over here. And I'm going to create on the one side, the very first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a hinge. One could use a chenier type hinge. That would be something I've tried, and I prefer the one I'm making right now, which is a lot more strength with regards to opening and closing a ring and also the wear and tear of the ring. So what I'm going to be doing on the first side is I'm going to remove from the one edge and the other edge so that I have one single piece coming from the original ring coming down that is going to protrude into the next part. I'm cutting and I'm filing it away so that I have 1/3 in the center. And then once I've done that, I'm going to move to the other side and I'll explain what I've done there. Turning my attention to the other side now. Now I'm taking that same space and I'm going to cut it down 1/2, so to create a little bed. Now the original ring has the structure right here. Now you could probably solder something on and create these lips, but if you have an original ring coming down all the way down, there's no solder joint, so I've got extra strength there. And that's exactly what we need with something like this. We need as much strength as possible. A ring gets worn on the hand, you're going to be picking things up, you're going to be moving things around. There's tension on the ring the whole time. So I've got a hinge on the one side, and when it comes back, I want a clip mechanism. So I'm removing the top over here, and my new ring that I'm making will be sliding over that clip mechanism to actually finish up the ring at the top. This is how they're going to meet. The clip mechanism, the shape, is the first thing I'm working on. The front part of it, a round, slightly and a half round, to slot into a little area which is made for it. It's all about extra stability. The ring is going to go through a lot. We must make sure that it is as stable as it possibly can be. By creating a little rounding on top of that little lip and then creating a groove at the bottom of the ring, you're securing it just ever so slightly more. The next thing I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be making some sort of a clip where the new ring actually slides over and clicks onto. Now at this point, there are different ways of doing it. This particular ring has got a secondary mechanism that's going to secure it. When I'm not working with a secondary clasp, there is a different method that I use. The clip mechanism is slightly different. It's a little tougher, but you have to make it a little tougher if you're not going to have a secondary clasp. I've now dealt with those two little extra sections that I've given myself on the side of the original ring. I'm now going to make the new ring, which is going to be based on the thickness and the width of where the hinge and the clip mechanism is going to be based. So I've cut my ring up to the size where I need it to be. Now I've got to do the negative of everything that I've just done on the original ring. I've created a hinge, but half of a hinge only. I've filed away 2/3, one on either side, to create a nice long lip, and I've got to take that negative space and create it on the new ring now. So I'm using my divider, I'm taking my distances, and I'm very cautiously cutting out this center section. So there's a bit of a rounding that needs to come onto the actual hinge part itself, but we'll discuss that with assembly. Right now I'm not worried about it. The only thing I'm worried about is making sure that my fit is as tight as I can possibly get it. Once we've done the one side and it fits, I can go to the other side, do the same thing. I've got a lip sticking out, I can take my dividers, measure that lip, and then from there onwards do the opposite. So I've done on the original ring the bottom section, I want to do on the top ring the top section. So now I'm carving out from the bottom with cutting it out and removing that metal. And remember, we've got a bit of a rounding on the actual lip that we spoke about, so I'm going to put a little rounding on the inside of it as well, so that my hinge comes together, the lip goes straight over each other, and the inside it's got a little rounding that fits, so nice and snug. I've got two parts. I've got the original ring and I've got the new ring that I've made, and I've made the groove, so everything fits together right now. At this point I put it over a triplet to see if I'm on size. It's important obviously to be on size, but if we've worked accurately we should be fine, but I'd like double checking it anyway. I'm going to drill the holes now. I'm going to be using a wire that runs through the hinge area that's going to be slightly thicker. I'm trying to give it its best possible chance in life. So I'm starting off by marking it halfway down with a divider, and then from here onwards I'm working without the centerpiece in. I then take a little bit of super glue and I join the hinge part together. I do this because I can now take the pilot holes that I drilled on the outside and follow them through from either side, so to make sure that the little pin area is the right size and also is in exactly the right place where I need it. I'm taking it apart with a flame and then putting a little watch pin in just to make sure that the hinge works well. On the section that comes over and clips, I'm going to need some sort of clipping mechanism. As I've discussed with the wedding band, if I'm not going to be doing a secondary clasp, I do a different method, and we will definitely discuss that in another video as well. But in this case, being a secondary thing, and also with me wanting to give it a little bit more access to open, I'm going to be using a little bead on top of the little lip. I'm not just going to solder a half a bead on there. I'm going to countersink that bead with a little ball phrase, and from there onwards pick it up and drop it halfway down by sweating it straight onto the lip that I've created. That way, when I've got the hinge on this side, which I'm now going to assemble because I want this to have all the tension that is in the real world going to be on the ring. So I'm pre-assembling this with platinum wire right now. I've taken my lens phrase and I've countersunk it ever so slightly on the edges, so that when I put my wire through and I cut them off just about a millimeter, just a fraction off a millimeter, when I flatten the wire and the wire spreads out, it fills this lens phrase little area that I've created, meaning that the wire is now fattened up on the side and caught up with the edges so that it can't move this way and that way. I'm using the tightest wire that I can possibly get because I want this whole thing to be as rigid as I possibly can get. Once that's done and I've created the little half round shape and put the bead in there, I can now bring the other part which will slide over that and force it over that edge, and that will give me an indication of exactly how far I need to do the countersink hole on the other side. So we've got a bead on this side. We want this side, when it comes over, to force itself over that section and then find the hole and go click. I'm going to put a secondary clasp on this one as well. It's got big diamonds. These rings do require a bit of maintenance because it's got moving parts. So just like you would go into a jewelry shop or to a goldsmith to go and check on the claws that are holding the stones, this ring just requires a little bit of maintenance to make sure that there's not excessive wear and tear, which can be serviced. That's where I'm going to leave this video. There's a lot to be spoken to about the second one as well, and I do apologize, but these things can drag on. I hope you guys are all well. Look after yourself.
I guess this is the end of the video.
I suppose that could be the end. Thank you very much for watching. Till next time, cheers.